Welcome to the 17 Law Studio. So glad to see you guys today. As you know, I've changed my format a little bit. You guys are sending me questions now, and I'm just going to continue to answer your questions around topics. I know I've done one of these videos around finances and the family, and whether it's who pays for college, do I buy my kid a 16-year-old, buy him a new car, that sort of thing, or savings, whatever questions you have now. Today, we're going to talk about some things that'll help your marriage, some things that are help keep your marriage together. You don't have enough time to really have a date night, that sort of thing. And couples who are very career minded, how do you work around that? Or do you think you're going to be the exception in your marriage by both of you having careers and it going well? What I've got several questions along these lines that will really help your marriage. Today, I'm really excited about what we're going to talk about. Game changing stuff today. And that sounds like a sales pitch, but you're already watching, so I'm not having to sell you anything. This is really true stuff. So I'm going to take the questions that you guys have asked me and I'm going to answer those. But I haven't spent a ton of time studying the questions, so I just want to do it off the cuff, kind of what hits me as I read the questions. I put them together in the categories over time, and then after that, I'll send. I just want to answer your questions, and when I get a lot on a similar topic, I feel like that's kind of important. So then I'd like to address those in these videos. Hope this helps. Before we get started, I need a favor. Trying to get over 100,000 followers on YouTube. It'd mean the world to me if you could go follow me on YouTube. Take a minute and do that. Click pause, come back. Now, I'll start with the question. I just want to jump right in. Not a lot of hype here. I'm probably considered a fairly boring person, but I do love helping families. There's nothing I enjoy more than helping families. All right, here's the first question. I want to have a better marriage, but we don't seem to have time to do anything about it. What do we do? Well, what would really help, I want to say this on every video, send me more information. I'm okay with a short question. If that's all you want to do, get on your phone, shoot that, that's fine. But don't feel like you're going to bother me if you send me like 3 paragraphs, because I want to know all the information so I can help you specifically, because if you are dealing with this, then somebody else is. But it says, I want to have a better marriage, but I don't seem to have time to do anything about it. Well, I would ask, what are you doing with your time? That would be one question I'd have. Another thing I would say to just about anybody, we pretty much do what we want to do. So if you wanted to play golf this weekend, we'd probably play golf. If I like right now, if I didn't want to do this video right now, I wouldn't be in the studio. I'd be happier out there on the golf course with somebody. But so if you'll do pretty much whatever you want to do, it's just a matter of making it a priority. So you're saying that your marriage, you said you want to have a better marriage, but you're not doing anything about it because it's not a priority. Because if it was a priority, you would do something about it. And while I was reading that question, there's another question that's close to that, and I'll read that in just a second, and probably tie these together. That I think it'll help you a ton. So when I say you do pretty much what you want to do, you probably met somebody for lunch this week, or there's something else going on, and maybe you volunteered for something at church, or maybe there's something in the community, you're a member of your chamber of commerce and you're doing something there, whatever the case may be. Now, you're doing all those things because they're important to you. You go to work because it's important to you, but then the most important thing you could be doing, which is probably working on your marriage, is honestly just lip service. It's really not that important to you because you're not doing anything about it. Okay, wait, let me read this other question before you stop and say, hey, I wish I hadn't sent it, and he's going to trash me for sending it. So here, I'm going to jump to the last question, and I'm going to do the ones in between in a minute. So, in tying with the question is, we want a better marriage that don't have time to do anything about it. Another question here is, I see all your videos about date night, but with 3 kids and all the activities they have, there's really no time left. Do you have any suggestions? Number one, I just want to share with you the best thing you could do for those children. One of the best, top, I'm sure there's some, but one of the best, if not the top 3 things you could do for your children is to have a good marriage. So what in the world does that mean? It means that some people feel like, hey, if I pour all my energy into my children, that's what's best for the children. That's not necessarily bad, pouring your life into your children, but that's not number one. Number one is pour yourself into your spouse. That's number one. Your spouse should be the most important human on earth to you, not your children, not your parents, not your cousin, not your boss, none of those things. It should be your spouse. You've heard me, if you watch any of my videos, I've got hundreds of them on YouTube. You'll see hundreds of them say your spouse has to be the most important person on earth outside of God in your life. Now, what'll happen is when you do have a good marriage, your kids will act better. They will do better. There's a sense of security in mom and dad. Uh, so if you really do love your kids, people get it backwards. They say, well, I need to ignore my spouse and love my kids the most, and put my marriage on hold our until the kids grow up, and then I'll work on my marriage. No, 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 it doesn't work that way. The best thing you could do for your kids isn't to give them everything, won't focus on. Best thing is to focus on your spouse. So if you're going to do that, then your spouse would be a priority with your life. So when you start off the week, like for example, my wife and I, every Sunday we get out our calendars and we say, okay, we're going to have a date night this week. Kids in the house, no kids, whatever the case may be, we're going to have a date night. We're going to say, okay, which one is it? Typically it's a particular night of the week. Sometimes it's more than one. And then it's on the calendar. And if somebody says, hey, would y'all like to do something that night? And we say, oh no, we got something on the calendar. Not going to do it. It's already booked, because it's that important. And our kids know that my wife and I are more crazy about each other today than we were the day we got married. And there's a reason. It didn't just accidentally happen. We've been purposeful on this. We've been intentional about having date night and making that the case. Well, we've got baseball, basketball, all these things, and Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, you name it. We have all these things going on with our kids. Well, that's okay that you do a lot of those things, but it shouldn't supersede the most important relationship you have on earth outside of God. It should not. There's none of Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts are not more important than your spouse. I get it. Just like us with kids and all this going on. Sometimes things do happen, but that's not the norm. That's not like 3 months in a row. That's like, oh darn, last week we didn't get to have a date night because things happened, but this week we're back on track. It wouldn't go past a week. It sure wouldn't go past 2 weeks on a terrible situation. The only time it's ever gone 2 weeks is when my wife took the kids to the grandparents for 2 weeks in the summer. That's the only time. Or my wife went on a trip with a bunch of friends that happened to be for 2 weeks. That's the only time we didn't have a date night that went past 2 weeks. It went more than a week. So it's that important. Well, we got kids and we got this. Well, if your spouse is that important, you'll figure out something. Like right now, if I said, okay, I'm going to give you $1 million if every week for the rest of the year you have a date night. Of course you would have a date night. You'd be calling friends. Hey, can you take Billy to carpool with Billy to basketball? And then tomorrow night I'll take your daughter with my daughter over to ballet. And you would just start working that out. But Russ, we have little kids. Well, our kids didn't come out teenagers. They were little at one time. So we did the same thing. How about you babysit my kid? You come over here and sit while my kid goes to bed early or whatever the case may be. And we're going out on a date or whatever we're going to do. And then on Friday night or the next night, whatever, I'll come over and sit at your house and we'll do the same for you and your small children. There's 100 creative things you can do if it's important to you to get a date night. Now there are kids activities. There's baseball. There's this. There's all these things. But again, if your spouse is the most important person on earth outside of God in your life, you'll figure out a way to do it. It's that important. So some of the things you can do is start saying no. What if your kid missed a practice? You know what? It's going to be okay if he misses a practice. I don't mean just don't show up. Call the coach and say, hey, I really need my son or my daughter to miss practice Thursday night. And the coach is probably going to say, okay. If your kid's really 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 good, he'll say, oh man, we'll miss him, but it's okay because that practice is not important as your relationship with your spouse. So you'll figure it out if that's important. If somebody said, here's $1 million, you got to have a date night every week for the rest of the year, you would figure it out. And so approach it from that way. There is time to do that. There are seasons. So, for example, we moved to a brand new city. It was really hard at first because we didn't know anybody. So we had to get to know people. We had to be intentional on finding people we knew we could trust, that sort of thing. So I get that. And it took a little while, but we figured it out. But until then, we had date nights at the house. Kids, you're going to bed early tonight. We're going to have a date night in the living room, or we're going to be on the back deck, or we're going to do this, and you're not going to bother us. We're going to have a date night one way or the other. Okay. Next question is, I have a job that requires travel, and I know that's going to be a problem with my marriage. What are some things I can do to make sure our marriage stays intact? That's a beautiful question. I love that question. I know a bunch of people who travel. I travel some, but mine's sporadic. It's not like I travel for a living, so I don't really have that issue, except for I am traveling some. And I know a lot of people I deal with travel all the time. A lot of times they leave on Sunday, come back Thursday, or leave Monday, come back Thursday, or something along those lines. Or sometimes they're gone 2 weeks at a time, and it's rare. I mean, it's that's hard. That is hard. That means that the other spouse is at home with the kids, and the kids come home from school, and that other spouse is doing all the homework, and they're crying because of the boyfriend and girlfriend stuff, and they're crying. Their hormones are messed up, and there's that, and all the puberty stuff, and and diapers, and the other spouse is having to deal with that, and it's really, really, really hard on a family if that's how you operate. And you want to keep your marriage intact. So what I see, and a lot of these, mainly guys are traveling. I see that more often than I see the women traveling. I've seen a lot of women who are traveling seem like their kids are a little bit older now. So this is just my personal experience. So when I've seen the dad travel considerable amount, so the dad's traveling, and it's not as glamorous as you think traveling. It's pretty exhausting. Like when I travel, we start at 7 in the morning, and usually there's dinner stuff all the way up to 10, 11, 12 at night, and it's pretty exhausting to do. But then, and sometimes we do some fun things when we're traveling. And then when you get home, the husband, the wife is probably not in the best of moods. She hadn't seen the husband all week. She's been working her butt off. She's doing all the dishes, all the meals, all everything, the lunches, and she's the therapist for the kids. She's fixed the faucet, the toilet leak. She's cleaned up all the puke. She's done all that stuff. And then when you get home, you expect her to be laying on the back with a drink in her hand and a bikini, waiting on you to come home just so y'all can oh, come here, my darling. Well, it doesn't work that way. It's usually she comes home and she's frustrated, and then you also have to do the yard work and all that. So the question is, how do you handle that? And one is, I wouldn't. I would say start looking. Maybe you have to because of financial reasons, or maybe you have to do it for a year until you get promoted and get to be stable. But that's you're asking a very tough thing. How do I make the impossible possible? And it's really hard. But if I were to toss out some tips, the one is be the most supportive husband or whoever's doing the traveling ever. I would also have very serious conversations with the kids on who's in charge. So, Dad, if you're the one traveling, those kids have to know that mom's in charge and what mom says goes, and you're gonna back her all the way down. If she grounds you for the next 20 years, by golly, you're gonna be grounded until she ungrounds you. If she puts your iPhone in the blender, well, it's gonna stay in the blender. But if dad comes in and undermines mom, who's back all day, never works. You're creating all kinds of problems. Even worse, you think you're being a friend to your kids, you're making it worse for your kids. Your kids don't know who's in charge, and then it makes it harder on mom. And that's a marriage killer right there. That's another reason it's so hard to do. Another thing you run into for guys traveling is it's so easy to be stupid and go to strip clubs and all those sort of things. I would make it a point to after dinner, whenever you go after dinner to your with your colleagues and all that sort of stuff, make sure that that's the time you're calling home and talking to the kids. Talk to them before they go. FaceTime them before they go to bed. Talk to the kids every night. How was your day? Act like you're there the best you can. Get on FaceTime. Get an iPad, iPhone, whatever, and talk to them. And what went on in school. How was that? How's your fastball coming? How's algebra coming? Oh, you got a little. Let me help you with it. And so when your wife texts you and says, "Hey, so and so's having trouble with algebra, could you help?" Sure, and you need to be that supportive on. And you're going to spend an hour or so plus talking to your kids and your spouse every night from the hotel room. That is huge. Next thing I would do is when you do come home, and if it's a guy talking to his wife and say, "Honey, how can I help?" and let her tell you. And she probably is the first night's going to say, "The kids are yours. I'll be back tonight. I'm going out with my friends. I'll see you tonight." And you got to be okay with that. You're coming home thinking it's going to be a great fun sex night. Well, that's probably not. That may not happen. The better you are throughout the week, the better chances that'll happen. But that first time when you get back, if you're traveling a lot, honey, how can I help if you've got kids? This was around the context of having kids too. So something I would recommend if you can possibly afford it is hire a yard guy. Don't come home and have to spend your 1 or 2 days off having to do yard work. Hire that out. Get a kid in the neighborhood to do it. If your kids are old enough, pay them to do it. That would make a huge difference, so you don't have to do that. Other thing is, assume that the weekend is for your family only. That's not your time anymore because you chose a job that travels. Your time you chose. It was your decision to travel. Now it's family time. So if your buddies call and say, "Let's go hunting and fishing and playing golf," don't do that. Now, occasionally, yes. But if you want your marriage to last, then that's the case. Now, here's the thing. Most women are quality time. That's their love language. That means they feel more loved if you spend more time with them. Spend more time with them, they feel more loved. Spend less time, they feel less loved. And okay, now you're gone during the week. One way to help that in the week, FaceTime. And when you are talking to your spouse during the week, super supportive. Hey, even if you don't agree with everything they say, you want to be super supportive because you're not there. You don't see the context. You don't see that this kid just threw up. This kid just had a smart mouth about this. This kid was on a site on his phone he shouldn't have. And so she said blank. Well, if you were there, you probably would have done the same thing, but you don't know the context. You're going to have to be extra supportive, and your wife needs to know you've got her back. Those kids need to know, they need to know who's in charge when you're gone. It doesn't need to be when daddy gets home, you're going to be in trouble. No. You can do that from time to time, but you're in trouble anyway. But when daddy gets home and finds out that what you did, oh my gosh, I just hope you're going to be able to drive a car before you're 40. So there's some things that you can do. Lots of FaceTiming during the week. Lots of FaceTime with the children throughout the week. Being super supportive of your spouse that's not there. And when you're home, you got to be home. You're home with the family. But it's hard. What you're asking for is hard. I would not do a lifetime of that, ever. Never a lifetime of traveling for one spouse with the other. The odds are stacked against you. All right, here's one that's not too dissimilar. We've been married about 3 years. Both of us have careers and we seldom see each other. You talk about time together, but this is actually working for us. Don't you think there are exceptions for this? Well, no, I don't. Um, have I ever seen it work? Uh, well, no. Uh, and some people will say, well, I know so and so, and he traveled or she traveled, and they did this, and they're not divorced. Well, is the only other standard is either married or divorced? If 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 that was the standard is we're not divorced, then okay, well, yeah, I guess there is an exception to that. But is there a happy marriage where the couple's like their honeymoon, or they're together and it's like just like they're best friends and they know each other so well and all that? No, that's hard to do when you're not together. How do you get to know someone when you're not together? Oh well, but we talk every night on the phone. Well, there's that. I guess you. I mean, I would hate to think that my wife and I mainly got to know each other on on the phone. Well, no, we FaceTime. This is technology. Well, I'd hate to think that that's how I really get to know my wife for years is mainly FaceTiming. Yeah, I guess I can see there's some benefit to that, but long term, there's the love languages of quality time. I mean, are you really, as a phone call, FaceTime, does that qualify? Probably helps. Yeah. Could you could you do this for a year or two? Maybe. You know, how many young men are going to be away from their wives for 4 or 5 whatever nights in a row and be okay with it long term? Uh, I mean, is that a chance that you want to take with your husband, that he's going to be out with whoever and that's going to be okay? Somebody else all day, every day is going to be the one paying him the compliments and telling him what a great provider he is and how smart he is and how good looking he is. I mean, is that, or do you want somebody to be doing that with your spouse or your wife? I just don't see a marriage doing well when when you're hardly ever together. And I just talked about that if one traveled and one stayed at home. But in this case, they're both in their careers and they don't see each other that often. Is it possible? Probably. Uh, when you look at marriage statistics, there's a lot to it. Now, when you look at statistics like, okay, there's the grandparents, they were married for 60 years, and they're really sane people, and they all save money, and they're good balanced people. It's not that they're not crazy, it's just normal, Mayberry type stuff. And then they had a couple kids, and they married from the similar things, and they have good moral compasses, all them, and they keep it. Those are not the people generally getting divorced, and those are the people who know, hey, porn is terrible for marriage. Yes, I should be involved in a church somewhere, and I should surround myself with good people. Those are the people who bring the statistics up. The people who were the husband and wife, they come home and they have dinner together around the table. They're together on the weekends. They go to church together and all these things, and they have a good handle on their finances, all that stuff. Those people bring the statistics to a good level. And so when you look at statistics and the couples are not together, the statistics, not my opinion, it is my opinion, but just the statistics are weighted against you, and I just wouldn't do that. And well, it goes back to, hey, I want to get my career on track, and then I'm going to worry about blank. Well, you could talk to anybody in their 40s, 50s, 60s, they would say that they wish they hadn't have done that, because your career changes, things change, and you have all that time to really get to know each other. And then let's just suppose you do this for 10 years, and then 10 years later you decide you're not going to do it anymore. You don't really know each other that well, and it's hard after 10 years to kind of get to know each other, especially when your wife has been traveling with certain people who think she hung the moon, and your husband's been traveling with people who thinks he hung the moon, and then you get home and find out that neither one of you hung the moon. It's just hard. So I would say, uh, do it if you have to. Do it for a season. Let's not make that a lifelong plan. All right, I don't want to keep going. Don't want to try to keep this short. I hope this helps on the marriage. I mentioned about staying together as a family. I just touched on the fact that wife's love language is quality time. Generally speaking, that's the case. I'm going to do another video on that soon to better explain that, and it'll make a little more sense. So I appreciate this. I hope this helps. Hope you helps your marriage. Hope this helps you make some really tough decisions. These are good questions, but they're going to require some really difficult decisions in your life to implement any changes. I don't want to make light of that. There's nothing easy about the decisions going to have to be made. But here's the thing about all these. I've given you some things like I wouldn't do this, I would do this or this. You may say, I just can't make a decision. Well, if your decision is I can't make a decision, then you made a decision to keep doing what you're doing. So you're going to make a decision. All right. Favorite thing I do in my life really is helping families. I absolutely love nothing more. I hope this helps you. Again, I'm trying to get 100,000 followers on YouTube. When you get a chance, go follow me on YouTube. I appreciate that, and good luck with your marriage.